All right, so we are back. I think when we last had Dom on the podcast, I think we were just after the championship. So, what better time to have you back on it and talk about a host of topics than right now? So, Dom, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, Jared. Nice to be with you again.
Yeah, so let's start. I think one of the big storylines we saw this summer was just another seismic shift in conference realignment. And I know you were on top of things as the whole messy process played itself out. I mean, when I looked at it this year, this was one of the first times I thought UConn might have had a legitimate chance at making that jump to the P5 with the Big 12 invite. How did you see things play out this summer? And do you think it was a legitimate chance when it was, kind of in the works and talks there?
I think it was definitely a legitimate chance. I just think that part of that process, which is much like when you're trying to lure a pro franchise from another state or another city. Part of that process is that these leagues are going to have multiple choices in front of them. And so, we look at it everything from the prism of Connecticut, as well we should. But the fact is, the Big 12 was looking at UConn as simply one of several options on the table. And I think if they were able to get Colorado, which is the team they really wanted, but only Colorado, then I think UConn would have been the next team. If they were only able to get, let's say, Colorado and two other teams or one other team, UConn might have been, the 16th team. But when the entire Pac-12 just blew up over the lackluster TV deal that it had, now the Big 12 had a buffet of teams to choose from, and decided to go the other way. So I think UConn was in many ways a pawn to get Arizona to move, get Colorado to move, get Arizona to move, and then ultimately get Arizona State and Utah to move. And from the Big 12 standpoint, it worked. If those things didn't play out, yeah, I think UConn would have been next in line. And I do think Brett Yormark is serious about wanting to upgrade basketball, and that UConn could be a part of that. But ultimately, the other options were better. So I think UConn was in a good position, but not in the best position. And I still think that they're in a good position. At some point, if teams are able to leverage their way out of the ACC, I think that could be UConn's spot too. I think UConn's going to have a place, whether it happens before, I'm on my deck sipping iced tea in retirement or not. That I don't know, but I think UConn's going to have a place in the power conference structure.
I know there was a lot of back and forth as this was all going on between the, different, I don't want to know if it's factions of the fan base here, or different
Mm.
followers of UConn here. If the Big 12 would have even been a prudent move for UConn, given a lot of the feelings for the Big East. You've been here for a while, you've got great opinions. What was your kind of driving thought behind whether or not you thought it would have been a good move or not for UConn if they ended up in the Big 12?
Well, if UConn could somehow stay in the Big East and park its football somewhere where they could get more money, more revenue coming in, yeah, that would be the ideal scenario. If there's some amalgam or merger or semi-merger between, let's say, a fractured ACC and the Big East, where UConn could play all of the Big East
Yeah.
schools and all of the former Big East schools now in the ACC, and play the ACC in football, that would be perfect. Or let's say Notre Dame is not able to schedule uh, many games because all the major conferences are now 18 and 20 teams, and they
NHL.
decide to go to the ACC for football, and UConn's the 16th team there. You got the best of both worlds. You're playing all those old Big East schools like Notre Dame, Syracuse, Pitt, Miami, Boston College. You're still playing just a different group of Big East schools, and you've got a place for football. Yeah, that'd be the ideal scenario. But if it came down to either going in the Big 12 or staying in the Big East, I would miss the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. So would everybody. I would miss UConn Villanova, UConn St. John's, UConn Providence, just like we missed it
Yeah.
when UConn was playing in the AC. But I don't see how you could turn down $35 million a year versus $3.5 million a year. So, yeah, I know some of the fan base was going to be nostalgic over the Big 12, but there was just no way of turning that down if that offer came. They would have had to take it. But yeah, we all would have missed the Big 12. Look, I love the Big East tournament. Fans of Connecticut do. But is it worth $30-something million a year to play in that tournament versus Kansas City?
Yeah.
Kansas City's not a bad town either. It's just a little harder to get to than New York.
When you look at how things are shifting now with the Pac-12 falling apart, Cal and Stanford out there trying to find a home, and now you hear the ACC, thinks about Cal, Stanford, and somehow SMU's in the mix now. You hear thrown out there for the ACC. How do you feel? And I think it's been something I've always struggled with ever since the other editions have come. It seems like UConn consistently gets passed over by the ACC. Do you think there are hard feelings there, or something that's leaving UConn kind of in the dust of these ACC expansion talks?
These are decisions that involve billions of dollars and have to make sense 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road. So if these decisions are made based on some personal animus or some grudge, then whoever's making those decisions on that basis should have been fired a long time ago. So, if Boston College doesn't want UConn in the ACC, it's because Boston College probably sees, someone muscling in on their financial territory and it costing them money.
Yeah.
So it'd be understandable for them to vote against them on that basis. If they're voting against what would actually be financially beneficial because, Richard Blumenthal brought a lawsuit or because Jim Calhoun insulted somebody 20 years ago, then whoever's making that decision should be fired. And if the ACC is not allowing UConn in because of that, or because, maybe Boston College doesn't want it, but everybody else does, then those people should be fired. So no, I think that's maybe a convenient way to troll people by saying, well, we don't want UConn because of this, or the heck with UConn because of that. But if it made enough money, they would
get it.
So the question is more, if the ACC is looking for additions to help keep Florida State and Clemson and Miami or those schools, the football powerhouses in the conference, happy, then UConn's probably not the way to go, right? Then you want the West Coast schools, although that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me, I guess. But if the ACC is looking to replace Florida State, replace Clemson, then I don't see why you wouldn't want UConn, because UConn would be, I would think, good enough in football to fill the bill for the remaining ACC schools, and they would bring so much more to basketball. So, a lot of it's being interacted. I always, I said this.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell me that Rutgers, you should never get caught up in the idea that this is decided on one season or one game or one coach. Okay. UConn football looks a lot better today because of Jim Mora, and it looks like they have some upside because of Jim Mora. Jim Mora could be gone in a year from now.
Yeah.
So if they make the decision based on what they do against NC State on the 31st, if they win, this is an ACC school. And if that to me, that's foolish. So this is a long-term decision. What did Rutgers bring to the Big Ten if you're just looking at one game or one season or one coach? Not a whole lot.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The long-term upside. So does UConn make sense, for those schools? And the other thing I would say too, and I think we all fall victim to this, when UConn plays in basketball in Madison Square Garden, people in Connecticut jam the Metro North and they go to New York and they fill up the Garden. And the Garden loves that, and New York loves that, and that's great. But the idea that Connecticut, quote, delivers the UConn market to a conference is, I think, rather overstated, because I don't think, I know that market. I, covered a lot of teams for a lot of years in that market. People aren't walking around Fifth Avenue talking about UConn. I mean, they're not. It's not UConn's not a New York team. Syracuse is not a New York team. Rutgers is not a New York team. If anything, it would be St. John's basketball, and that's not a big deal. UConn's a pro sports. So Manhattan, New York, that's pro sports market. So UConn delivers a piece of it, but UConn's appeal is that they deliver the 25th or 26th largest market in the country, New York, and the Hartford, New Haven market grasps a piece of New York and Boston to go with it. That in and of itself should be pretty attractive, more attractive than a lot of Power Five markets. But, the idea that, people in New York are going to start tuning in or watching or going to see UConn versus Iowa State in any sport, that's a little bit overstated, in my view.
Yeah, fair point there. I'll wrap with this one on the conference realignment stuff here. I think the latest hypothetical that's been thrown out there is, are we going to get to a point where football just breaks away from the NCAA, does its own thing, and basketball and the Olympic sports all fall under a different umbrella that it's under NCAA overrule and stuff? Do you see a scenario where that plays out?
I do. I think that could happen. I think it would make a lot of sense. I think the coast to coast travel that might make sense in football doesn't make sense in the other sports.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing, Notre Dame has been playing schools on the West Coast since they had to take a 2-day train ride to get there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so coast to coast conference reach makes a lot of sense in football. Doesn't make much sense in other sports, especially the minor sports. I mean, Rutgers against Oregon in volleyball. I mean, that's so. I think you could one day see a football only college association, or you could also see, and this would be a great thing, is for all the schools left out in the cold, assuming the ACC doesn't add Stanford, the 4 West Coast schools. Put the 4 West Coast schools with Notre Dame and UConn and maybe UMass and Temple and Army. You could have a pretty decent, New Mexico State. You could have a pretty decent football-only conference.
Yeah.
It could garner a halfway decent football TV deal and a halfway decent, tie-in. I think there's room for that. So I think, I don't think, again, I do think eventually UConn will be in a Power Five. I just don't think, probably not going to happen the day after tomorrow. But then again, it could, because these things come out of left field. And I would say this, just because you haven't heard anything about UConn and the ACC doesn't mean that there's nothing going on, because they might just be better at keeping it a secret than the Big 12 was.
Yeah. I'm going to take a quick break from the interview to tell you about my friends at Martin Rosol's Meats. This 4th-generation Connecticut family business produces kielbasa, hot dogs, sausages, and deli meats using Martin Rosol's very own original recipes. Their products can be found in grocery stores, delis, restaurants, and hot dog stands throughout the state. And if you're looking for your fill right away, check out their retail store in New Britain. For more information, visit martinrosolsinc.com and go support a UConn fan-owned business. And now, back to the interview. So we spoke a lot in the conference realignment stuff here about, football kind of driving the bus here. We're just under 2 weeks away from the UConn football season kicking off. I know you've been at practice, you've been talking with the team and the coaches. Give me quick thoughts, heading into this season on where you think this team stands.
Well, the bar is raised. I think last year, the year before, you were saying, or I was saying, hey, be fun to watch, be entertaining, give us something that people want to go see.
Yeah.
Last year, finally, UConn achieved that. I mean, they were 5-1 at home. The rent, even when it wasn't sold out, is very loud. Durante Jones pointed that out among about a million other things that he pointed out on Friday. The rent don't let the crowd fool you. The rent gets very loud.
Yeah.
And those weekends were a tremendous amount of fun. So they did that. And I think they can do that again. But now you really expect them to do that again. And now you expect them to take what they did last year and be one better, be a little bit better, be 8-4, go to a more a higher profile bowl game, maybe something between the middle of December and the end of December, right? Something around, maybe not Christmas Day, but maybe something between Christmas and New Year's. So, I mean, that would be a good. So I think 7 or 8 wins is a worthwhile and realistic goal, even if Vegas is putting the over under at 4 and 4.5, and
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of projections for UConn maybe being 5-7. But I think I think most of the games that they have, I would argue maybe all of their games except Tennessee, I would put in the winnable column. They
Yeah.
won't win
No,
all of them.
agreed.
But UConn can't win at Georgia State. I mean, they can't win at Rice. They can't beat Utah State at home. Last year they were 27-point underdogs at Utah State. This year they're 15-point underdogs against North Carolina State at home. So I think it's realistic to expect UConn to be better than last year. How much better? We'll see. But I don't think 8-4 should be a bridge too far for UConn.
As you've been talking with the players and coaches, I know as you're thinking about columns throughout the season here, what are storyline, give me a storyline or two that you're kind of keeping your eyes on throughout this football season.
Well, I'm looking forward to see how their offense opens up. They have a lot more weapons in wide receiver. He really upgraded that room in late in the offseason. He a lot of people transferred and everybody was wringing their hands over these transfers, not realizing that he had a bunch of guys coming in via transfer portal that were going to upgrade it. The tight ends upgraded. A much more varied group of running backs to throw the ball to, and all the quarterbacks are healthy. I think they're going to have guys that can throw it downfield. If Zion Turner is the quarterback again, it's because he beat out guys that can. He would have to be much better than last year to do it. I'm intrigued if Tyquan Roberson wins the job. I'm intrigued because this is a guy that a 4-star prospect that went to Penn State.
Yeah.
And was really very promising there. Got nosed out of the shuffle. A lot of really good quarterbacks do. Troy Aikman got nosed out of the shuffle once and ended up somewhere else. So I'm interested to see if he were to win the job over the other guys who I think are more known quantities. Interesting to see how their offense opens up. So that's the one thing. I think their offensive line, which was really good last year, could be great. I think their defensive line, which was good last year, could be really, really good. And I'm also interested to see how their defense works with, Jim Mora, essentially the defensive coordinator, although others will have part of that responsibility. So I think, I think they can be. I just, you had to be encouraged by what they were last year, and I just think overall, I think they can build on what they did last year. People didn't think last year was a fluke. They stopped laughing at UConn the minute Jim Mora walked in the door, which is what happens when you get a coach like that, the right coach. And I think people are going to take them. Other side of that coin, Jared, people are going to take them seriously, which means no one's going to take them lightly. They're going to have to be ready to play to win some of the games that they won last year. Boston College is going to be loaded for bear when they play them, and probably so is some of the other teams that they may have taken by surprise.
When you look at having a team now that has to deal with some level of expectations, which you really haven't had here for the football program in quite some time. I know you talked about last year was like just see them be competitive, see them be in these games and have some fun with them. Now that they've made it to a bowl game in year one under Jim Mora, and those expectations are starting to build where you say, hey, 8 wins, isn't out of the picture here. How do you see this team equipped to deal with having to play with some expectations to it? I mean, you've got players now that are on watch lists. There is some, definitely raised expectations, I'd say, heading into this year.
Well, Jim talked about that on Friday, that, they know how to deal with adversity because they've had a lot of practice at that. They have to learn how to deal with success, and I think you almost saw a sense when they were up 14-0 at Utah State last year as 27-point underdogs.
Yeah,
it was almost like, what are we doing here? And I think now they have to be prepared to deal with success, be prepared to go into games expecting to win. I thought there were times last year when they were expecting to win and didn't, let games get away against Ball State, let's say, or against Army, and they were angry about it, which is the way it should be. So I think they've got to be better prepared to handle success, because I think they're going to have some. And they've got to go into that first game. That first game is really, I hate to overemphasize the first game or early games in the season, but the whole seasonal tone can be set in that first game. If they can win it, or even if they have an excruciating loss, it could mean so much to this season. If they could win it, if they beat NC State, you have to feel like that changes the picture. When you go through the season, like Mike and the Mad Dog used to do, it's a win, that's a win, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a win. Beating North Carolina State changes that whole equation.
Trajectory, yeah.
You start looking at Georgia State and saying, "Oh, they can win that," and you start looking at Duke and, "Oh, they should win that. It's home." And so they think that first game is such a tone setter, being ready for that game and being ready to come out fired up and having a good crowd and playing to that crowd. And North Carolina State's got a lot of new faces and new people in new positions, and maybe they're the ones that might not be as ready.
Yeah.
The first game as UConn is. UConn's got, a lot of new players, a lot of the same players, though. They should have some cohesion. So I just think so much is riding on that first game as a tone setter for the whole season. Is it a tone setter for the whole history of the program? As I mentioned before, that might be overdoing it, but I think it's an important game for everybody. I think if they win that game, then people won't start thinking about basketball for, at least 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, moving on now from UConn football, because I love throwing around some of these different topics with you. Just quickly, pro football, as we talk about it in the region here, Giants, Jets, Patriots. Who do you think does the best of those three this year?
Well, the Giants last year were a lot like UConn football last year. New coach, new attitude, people and so they've got something to build on, and they need to build on. I mean, they can't afford Daniel Jones to take a step back. It looks like they've got Saquon Barkley in a walk year determination mode, which is not, you don't often see that in football, but it's nice to see. If he doesn't get 3-4 games into the season and say, "I'm not going to play because I don't want to risk my future," or whatever. But I like a whole lot of things about their team. I think they're very hungry. They're very well coached. They're very well organized. I like a whole lot of things about their team. The Jets, we've been down this road with them so many times before. When they got Boomer Esiason, when they got Brett Favre. Is Aaron Rodgers different? He seems to have a lot more life in his body, a lot more football left in him maybe than those guys had when the Jets got him. They seem to have a lot more weapons. They seem better organized. So obviously the expectations are on them. People are talking, they're built to win right now, this year, next year. So the expectations are more on them. I expect a lot out of the Giants. Everybody expects a lot out of the Jets. The Patriots, let's face it, things are not what they used to be there. They don't have the quarterback. There are questions about the coach that you haven't ever heard before, that maybe things are passing them by, which also makes the AFC available for the Jets if they make a move. So, I think it's maybe we'll have the fun year in football that we were expecting in baseball and didn't have in New York, at least. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But I really like everything about the Giants from the vibe on down. And, I think the Jets probably, the hard knocks thing might have worked in the Jets' favor. It's like it maybe gave them a little bit of confidence in themselves as opposed to a bunker mentality. So, I would look forward to the football season. And even, for all what it looks like, don't ever write the Patriots off. Don't ever write them off. I know. Like the Red Sox. I'd say that in the beginning of the year. Never write the Red Sox off. And they're still in it when the Yankees and Mets are not. So don't write the Patriots off.
It's a perfect segue because I know baseball is at the your true love there. You followed the Yankees for a while. This is the worst Yankees team you've seen since when?
Boy, that's saying something. Because the years that they missed the playoffs, the last years of the core four, etc.
Yeah.
they were actually pretty good teams and they were in it late.
Yeah.
So I think you'd have to go back to 1992 when they had their last losing season. And though that era, when the Yankees had this much, mediocrity up and down the team,
Yeah.
they're probably a little better than that because they do have a legit superstar and a legit superstar pitcher that those early 90s Stump Merrill, early Buck Showalter teams didn't have.
Hmm.
But they just have so many journeyman minor league free agents, my career minor leaguers in there, and so much mediocrity up the middle.
Yeah.
Just so many bad decisions. It's so easy nowadays to sell on a younger generation of fans the idea that you got to trust the process, that results are random. It's if the process is right, trust it. 30 years ago, no one ever heard of trust the process. Nobody ever heard of analytics. It was the results stink.
Yeah.
Okay, you went out and traded for Montas. You went out and signed Rodon for a bunch of money, and the guy you got rid of, Montgomery, is better than both of them put together. You went out and you got a center fielder who is really an average player, except for these analytics that claim he saves runs a game, which is nice, but you never score any runs. So, I just you got to look at the results, and it's a results business, and the results aren't there from move after move after move after move after move the last 3 or 4 years. The results
flopped. Yeah.
And the fall, someone's got to take the fall for that. Someone has to take the fall for that.
Is that Boone or Cashman? How do you see it playing out as he head towards the offseason?
I like Aaron Boone. I don't know how much he actually is able to do on his own instincts. That's the big question. But this team is badly put together. Aaron Boone didn't trade for Harrison Bader. Aaron Boone didn't sign Rodon. Aaron Boone didn't trade for Montas. Aaron Boone didn't trade for Stanton.
Yeah.
And then take the Yankees out of the market for like a Bryce Harper or a Machado.
Yeah.
Those are Brian Cashman's decisions. And, I think I've known him a long time. I think he's a great baseball man. I think he's had a Hall of Fame career with the Yankees. I think he could go somewhere else and resurface as a champion. It would not surprise me the way Dombrowski has in many places. But I just think things have gotten stale and run their course with the Yankees, and they need a new voice and a new approach to things. That's just the way, I think that's what's best for the Yankees at this point. So, they're going to have to trade some people and eat the money. They're going to have to do a better job of developing players out of their farm system and identifying the right ones. They're just everything's got to be better, right? Even right down to their training and rehab protocols, where people keep getting hurt and getting hurt again while they're rehabbing the first injury. And I think the Yankee. This is true of a lot of teams, but it's including the Mets. But I think it's more so with the Yankees because of the pandemic and the season that was shut down because of it, and all the upheaval in baseball around that. Sign stealing scandals, spider tack, rabbit baseballs coming and going, all kinds of rules changes, labor stoppages, not having a real spring training for about 3 years. We tend to look back with a distorted view and think that players whose best season, we look at players and think their best season was maybe the year before last, when it was really 5 years ago. So we're waiting, the Yankees have gotten hung up waiting for the 2017 Severino to show up.
Yeah.
2017 Stanton to show up. The 2019 LeMahieu or Gleyber to show up. That was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. And those players are not showing up. So I think the Yankees have to also maybe take a more realistic view that some of the players they have they're not going to, they've seen better days and they're not going to see those days again, and make evaluations on that basis.
Well, Dom, I really appreciate the time. Always fun getting into all this stuff. I mean, what did we get? 8-win UConn, Cashman Stale. We got a little in on the pro football team. So I think we covered the bases for the fall here until we have you on next because as you said, it'll only take people 15 minutes to start thinking about basketball season around here.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to start talking about repeating or trying to repeat or getting back to the Final Four, and we got to start talking about the women.
Yeah.
The women are almost like the Jets. They're built to win right now. They could have three All-Americans out there. They got to stay healthy, and I think this could be a year where you find both in the Final Four. Wouldn't surprise me, and maybe another one of those dual parades that are so much fun. So we'll see.
Yep. Both these teams coming off they've got that European glow to them now, right?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Well, Dom, as always, appreciate it, and thanks so much for hopping on.
Jared, appreciate it anytime. Thank you.